Hi, movie shot here. Today, I'm going to explain an action, adventure, and drama film called The Book of Eli. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Pieces of small debris are floating down, hitting the ground of a dark, gloomy forest. A gun appears, along with a lifeless body. In the background, a cat is scavenging and looking for something to fill its scrawny body. As the creature is looking for food, another is doing the same. A man named Eli is breathing through a gas mask, gasping for air. He steadies the aim of his bow, taking the life of the unsuspecting creature. While walking through a desolate land, Eli comes across a rundown car. He looks for something of use, but all that is left is the driver's skeleton. His next stop is an abandoned house. He kicks the door open with his gun ready in his hand. However, there's no one there. He opens the door to a room and is surprised to see a dead man. Aside from the smell, the dead man's shoes are the first thing he notices. He grabs them, taking them out for a spin. Walking, grooving, happiness clearly showing in his face, almost seeming like he isn't in a post-apocalyptic world. He cooks the cat for dinner, talks to a mouse, feeds it, and plays some tunes using his iPod, all while sharpening his knife and cleaning his gun like he's preparing for war. He proceeds to clean himself with a KFC wet wipe, revealing his scars, a mural of sorts showcasing everything he has been through. He reveals a book wrapped in cloth and reads until he drifts off to sleep. Finally, the morning comes, and with a breath of fresh air, a glance towards his powerless iPod, he returns to his journey. Eli soon meets a broken and traumatized woman. She asks him for help, but he knows better. He has seen this situation countless times and could smell the enemy's unbathed selves miles away. He shouts for the hijackers to show themselves and they appear, knocking down their hiding spots in the process. They ask for his belongings, clearly showing their intent of violence. However, Eli is unfazed and warns the group's leader to keep his hands to himself. However, the leader doesn't intend to listen. Within a split second, like magic, the hand is cut clean. Then, with a mix of anger, fear, and shock, the leader, with one hand, commands the group to kill Eli. Eli survives and kills everyone except for the woman. Eli grabs everything of use and leaves some water for the woman. He says his parting words and returns to his path going west. He continues his journey as if nothing happened. He sits atop a destroyed bridge, observing a couple getting troubled by a bunch of bikers. Deep down, he wants to help, but he will have to go against his will to stay on the path. What's happening isn't his concern. Later on, he finds himself at a crossroads and goes right. Eli arrives at a city where a small community resides. As a foreigner, the people are wary of him. He enters a shop and is quickly greeted by a gun. He shows his hands to show that he means no harm, and the owner of the shop checks if he is one of them, but Eli assures him that he is not. He trades a lighter and a couple of KFC wet wipes for a full charge on his Fathom 900 battery. Meanwhile, the same biker group from earlier comes into town with a bunch of books that they give to a powerful man, their boss. Unfortunately, the book that the man is looking for isn't there. Eli soon enters a dining hall-looking establishment thirsting for a drink of water. He sells a piece of cloth and 2 gloves for a full refill on his container. The bartender calls a woman named Solara, and she goes to fill the container. A guy named Martz, who is the leader of the biker group from earlier, confronts Eli. Martz shows signs of anger and hostility, but Eli doesn't want any trouble. Feeling trapped, he slams Martz's face on the counter while announcing that Martz is a murderer of innocent people pertaining to the couple that they killed earlier. Martz falls to the floor and Eli then tries to leave the establishment, but everyone starts to block the entrance. He has no other choice than to go through all of them. He proceeds to take the life of everyone who tries to attack him. Solara enters the hall and sees what's happening, so she shouts loud enough to stop the chaos. More of them arrive, and Eli quickly finds himself playing nice with the boss. They begin to interrogate him, asking him questions about his identity, values, and agenda. He refuses to reply with anything that will lead to them knowing who he is and what he aims to do. However, Eli and the boss share something in common: they're both educated and civilized. The boss offers him an opportunity to work for him because he plans to expand his community. He turns down the offer, stating he has to go west. The boss then invites Eli to stay the night, providing him a warm bed, food, and water. He agrees, but he feels as though disagreeing isn't an option. After a while, a blind woman comes into the room, giving him food and water. He asks her how that came about, to which she replies she was born that way. The woman reports to the boss that Eli is different and he will not follow him like the others. The boss thinks otherwise and decides to send Solara to Eli's room, even though the woman begs him not to. Solara comes in, wearing a revealing nightgown. She tries to make advances, but Eli respectfully declines, opening the door for her to leave. She pleads not to make her go as the boss named Carnegie will hurt her mother, who happens to be the blind woman. She offers to sleep on the floor and tells Eli to lie to Carnegie by stating that they slept together. He agrees, and Solara starts asking about the pre-apocalyptic world. She sees the book that Eli is hiding. He asks her where they get their water, but she insists on telling him only if he tells her about the book. The night ends with them eating and praying together, resembling a date. When morning comes, Solara reports to Carnegie and prays before eating with her mother. She's unable to finish the prayer, and Carnegie notices this. He interrupts the prayer and interrogates Solara, asking her if she has seen a book or read anything. She refuses to answer, making Carnegie use violence on her mother to make Solara talk. Finally, with no choice, she breaks and tells Carnegie about the book with a leather cover and a crucifix on the front. Carnegie and his men search for Eli, but he is gone. Carnegie's right-hand man then shoots the ignorant guard looking after him. Meanwhile, Eli gets the battery from the shop and then meets guns pointing at him as soon as he steps out. Carnegie asks for the book, showing his intent to kill. He wants the book for the power it has, the power of faith and belief. Carnegie pitches the idea of a community in a world where people are united by faith, saying the book shouldn't be kept by one person but distributed to all. Eli shows a desire for that as well, but not with Carnegie. Carnegie orders his right-hand man to shoot Eli, but every bullet just seems to graze and miss him. Then all hell breaks loose. Eli starts to shoot with pinpoint accuracy, hitting them one by one while no shot is hitting him, as if he has the power of God protecting him. Finally, he hit Carnegie's leg with a shotgun, signaling the end of the brief battle. All that is left is him and the right-hand man lowering his gun, allowing him to walk away. Solara runs after Eli, but he doesn't want anything to do with her. However, she grabs his attention with a single phrase. Solara says that she will take him to where they get their water. So they make a visit to the spring, and as they exit, Eli says to Solara that he forgot his sunglasses inside. And her gullible self goes into the cave, making it too easy for him to lock her from the other side. He then expresses that the road is no place for someone like her, to which she responds with an unpleasant curse word. Carnegie is screeching in pain while someone is fixing up his leg. He announces that they will go after Eli, but his right-hand man shows dismay because he doesn't understand why they would go to such lengths for a book. Carnegie argues it's not just a book but rather a priceless commodity. The right-hand man contracts a deal stating that he will give his utmost loyalty in exchange for Solara, and Carnegie laughingly agrees. They bring out their vehicles and start their journey west in search of Eli. Solara is lost in the middle of the road. There she meets a familiar scene of a woman asking for help. Solara offers her assistance, but the injured woman tries to say she doesn't need any and asks her to leave. She is stubborn, and that stubbornness leads to her screaming as two thugs manhandle her. As she shouts for help and the feeling of hopelessness grows, an arrow pierces through the pants of the thug. Eli arrives at the scene just in time to rescue her. Carnegie and his men arrive at the place of the thugs who harmed Solara. They decide to stop for the night and plan to make ground early in the morning. Meanwhile, Eli squats down to read his book. Solara asks him if he reads the book every day and requests for him to read some to her. He obliges and starts a sermon just like a priest to his listeners. He then explains why the book is just not any book, it is the only one of its kind left. The rest of the copies are now ashes, and its words and lessons are only memories to some. He then tells more of how everything was before, during, and after the war, telling a story of how the sky opened up, burning everything and everyone, leaving a lucky few that survived. And him being one of them. On how he got the book, he relays events that start with a voice coming from inside of him. He follows it, leading him to the book under a pile of rubble. Then, the voice instructs him to embark west and go on a seemingly endless walk. Driving through the long road, Carnegie signals his men to stop. They venture into an abandoned nuclear power plant that the two stayed in the night before. Solara discovers that Eli has been walking for over 30 years, and not once has he thought that he is lost because he carries his faith with every step. And his direction isn't governed by just sight. The two encounter an abandoned house. They approach cautiously with Eli leading the way. With a slight turn of a doorknob, they find themselves in a pitfall. The door opens, introducing an old woman, and her husband looks down and threatens the two. However, the old woman shows a shard of kindness in her heart and invites them for a cup of tea. A couple of sips in, a friendly bond starts to form, and the old man invites the two outside. Before their eyes are graves lined up. Eli and Solara quickly assume that these were from people the old couple killed and ate, as Eli observes that the old woman's hands were shaking, meaning she is a cannibal. They make their way out, but suddenly, they see Carnegie and his men. They lock themselves in, and with no hesitation, the old man lifts the cushions on his couch, revealing a motherload of weapons foreseeing the chaos that is about to ensue. With a megaphone, Carnegie voices out his requests, which are Solara and the book. To their surprise, a book wrapped in cloth flies out of a window. They begin to open it, and to a bigger surprise, the book turns out to be a makeshift bomb. The timer goes off and causes a car to flip from the explosion, accompanied by the sound of flesh hitting the ground and bullets firing. The rain of ammunition punctures the house through, with the hole showing the scenery from the other side. They survive the onslaught, but the battlefield is soon flipped upside down with the sight of a bazooka. Carnegie's right-hand man fires it, decimating the old man's wife, and he follows soon thereafter in a spur of rage. The disparity between the forces grows significantly when a mounted machine gun introduces itself to the fold. Their chances are thin. Eli and Solara realize that there is no way out of this and soon accept their fate. Carnegie asks him where the book is, but he chooses not to reply, so they start searching for the book in his bag. It is nowhere to be seen. As a test of his fortitude, his eyes show no fear in the sight of Carnegie's gun. However, he does not realize that all his strength falters because of this one weakness, Solara. This leaves him no choice but to reveal where the book is located. With the book in the wrong hands, Eli's faith has also left him. And with a pull of a trigger, he would stand no more, and he would walk no more. With his dying breath and his body weak, his strong faith gives up on him. Carnegie asks for his prayers and goes on his way with a defeated Solara in his possession once again. But a sudden spark of fight lights up inside of Solara. In her hands is a rope she uses to strangle the driver, causing a commotion in the vehicle. With her gashed face, she gathers her thoughts and acts quickly. A convenient grenade presents itself in the seat of the car. She throws it across, and the grenade rolls underneath the truck and explodes. Carnegie's eyes exude the frustration he feels. With her plan unexpectedly working, Solara gets into the car, and a moment of shock occurs as Carnegie's right-hand man gets a hold of her arm. But the hold isn't a forceful one. Instead, it is a weak grasp, indicating that he's letting go and saying goodbye. Solara notices a blade that belonged to Eli is piercing his chest. Without any fuel left, Carnegie decides not to go after Solara, marking the end of his chase. Solara drives to the house in search of Eli, but he is nowhere to be found. Eli isn't outside the house because his journey isn't over. Instead, he walks down the long road going west, and Solara finds him. Together in the car, they drive towards the still unknown destination. She apologizes for the trouble she caused and for making the man give up the book. But Eli soon realizes that what made him give up the book was not the girl in danger but the desire to do for others more than he does for himself. Carnegie has the book in his hands, but he soon finds out that it is locked. Eli smells the ocean, displaying his exceptional olfactory senses. They're now driving across the sea on a bridge that's still standing. She hit the brakes, and they start to go on foot to get to the other side. The two ride a boat by the shore, taking turns rowing and both feeling the coldness of the ocean breeze. A man shouts from afar, cautiously asking what their business with the place is. Eli introduces himself, claiming he has a King James Bible in his possession, knowing he does not. Back in the city, the engineer from the shop shakingly attempts to open the locked Bible. Meanwhile, Eli and Solara successfully enter the heavily guarded place. What meets them is a man, a plethora of people, books, and machinery making up an organization that aims to inform the rest of humanity about the world they've lost. They have all sorts of documents ranging from Mozart to Shakespeare, but they don't have a Bible, which Eli claims he has. Back in the city, a few clicks and a few turns after, the engineer finally picks the lock. And there, Carnegie has the secret to power in his hands. The excitement on his face quickly turns into sorrow and confusion. At the same time, Eli asks for some paper and a lot of it. Carnegie realizes that the book is not blank, but it just doesn't contain ink as it's written in Braille. And with 30 years of reading or feeling the book, Eli knows it by memory and by heart. As Eli speaks the book of Genesis verse by verse, the irony rises as to how the verse "Let there be light" sheds light on the truth that Eli could not see the light as he is revealed to be blind. As a last attempt by Carnegie to receive the word of God, he calls upon the blind mother of Solara. A faint smile is seen on her face as she touches the Braille writing. Unfortunately, she can't remember how to interpret it. The infected leg of Carnegie is eating him up, diminishing him to his weakest point and with no one by his side. Solara's mother teases him, making him realize that he reaps what he sows, and this is Carnegie's harvest. He sits leaning on a rail, observing as everything he built turns into ash. There lies Eli, like a patient to a therapist, speaking the word of God. Speaking his message of gratitude as his journey to the West ends with God as his destination. With this, a new journey arises. Solara, with Eli's blade and iPod, finds her way back home. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.